please remember to leave a like, a comment, share the video about, and if you haven't already, subscribe. Thank you. Well, isn't this just fantastic? Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing a response video to a number of videos from one TikTok user because I believe I've covered an aspect of their content before and they tickle me just enough I feel it only right to give them some airtime on this channel. I also think there's a distinct possibility they may be responding to something I've said or the manner I deliver in within my own content because I've covered them somewhere else before, on Rumble more notably, or is it a Megon too? Two of the videos we're going to look at concern dating plus size or overweight or morbid obese or fat people. These titles are important, it suits the theme. The second concerns the movie industry and the reduction of fat suit usage. And the third one being what I believe may well be a comment aimed at my direction. Some of the things they say certainly line up with my style of content anyway. So to the first video, we're going to look at dating preferences.
If you do not date fat people because you just happen to view fatness as neutral but not be particularly attracted to it, fine. That's a preference.
Off the bat, this statement's quite a fascinating one. When you view people to consider dating, appearance does play a part. Whether we like it or not, it's why we make a concerted effort when we go on what is dubbed a date. So in reality, there is no such thing as viewing those who are bigger or fatness, as you have dubbed it, with neutrality. Same can be applied to skinny, thick, dad bod, stocky, all the curves, and so on.
If you don't date fat people because you think being fat means that they are gross, lazy, live an unhealthy lifestyle, or are embarrassing to be seen with in public, that's fatphobic. In the context of being phobic of fat people, that's actually okay then, really, isn't it? If we're going to go with what phobias actually are, as opposed to what it's now used as, which is a thought-terminating cliche to shame those who disagree with you. Generally, to be overweight, there is a level of choice involved. That choice comes at the cost of being more energetic or living a longer, fuller life. But it is a choice nonetheless many make because they want that. There are some that don't, of course, health reasons insert all your individual uniqueness here, right? I have covered enough people on this channel for years who clearly show signs that they do not want to be better or live a healthier, longer, fuller life, instead preferring a more sedentary lifestyle. It is also still a preference as well though. I prefer not to date someone who's disgusting. That level of disgusting can accommodate many different facets of life. Gross is applicable here and all other words you use as a quaint way of trying to describe people how we, many of us that aren't fat, perceive those that are fat, according to you. Although I think this might be compensating because someone said it to your face. But to insist your preference is for people who aren't lazy, sloppy, and disgusting and unhealthy, meaning that means you prefer skinny people because all fat people are those other things?
I think you'll find you're inferring and asserting a bit too much, protesting, as it were, perhaps compensating, like I earlier mentioned. In this instance, it should be pointed out that many who are fat, many who are not fat, can in fact be disgusting. Because we know that to be true, it does come across as you getting a bit too agitated over some rather simple words for no real reason other than to be simply indignant.
That's actually bigoted.
So, it is not going to change the outcome of somebody not wanting to date you just because you are trying to, in your mind, educate them on what bigotry is. Simply you are stating it because you want to try to shame them into submission instead. That is typically how it works with those who believe themselves tough on the internet. Oh, you don't agree with me, you are a bigot, you are phobic in some manner, and now allow me to woe be me for the remainder of my video.
That's actually deciding that one group is all the same because of how they look. Hope that makes sense. Have a good day.
This kind of fascinates me because the first statement you make at the beginning of this video is just a cuter way of saying the exact same thing but taking more offense at the tiny detail of it, the minutia. And I'll play it again, the first part, just to drive that point home.
If you do not date fat people because you just happen to view fatness as neutral but not be particularly attracted to it, fine. That's a preference.
Now insert some arbitrary ad homs and you've basically made the same point, but use the word preference so you can make it seem like you've made a binary point. It's either this or this. On to video number 2, the fat suits.
I don't know if anyone else has noticed this, but in the past 5 to 10 years, I started to notice that there are a lot fewer fat suits being used in comedy and a lot more being used in prestige drama.
Especially since Brendan Fraser won the Oscar for his movie, that rather large character he portrayed. There's been much in the way of criticism of fat suits in favour of representation instead. I'm often intrigued by the representation argument because a lot of those that make those arguments 10 years later go on to lose most of the weight because it turns out their health is failing them and they've realised the consequences of it. The counter to that would be, if you're going to push for representation, then you are empowering, emboldening those who make that conscientious choice. And if you are someone in the spotlight, you'd want to be more of a role model. Whether that means being thinner or not, I'm not entirely sure, because I think most of the role models we hear about are all shady as feck.
In the early 2000s, we had the Shallow Hals and the Norbits and the Big Mama's House and all these different comedy movies where the entire crux of the movie was just one big fat joke because there was a lead character in a fat suit.
Not gonna lie, I found those to be quite funny. Shallow Hal had a bigger message to take home about judging a book by its cover. If you want to add another movie with this similar ballpark of comedy, you can add The Nutty Professor. Big Mama's House, also very amusing. The reductio ad absurdum aspect of these is what made those movies so successful. It was one big fat joke, but there was also the underlying message of intolerance and teaching people to be less intolerant and more accepting. If you were unwilling to see that, chances are you were too busy taking offense or you didn't bother to watch the movies in the first place. Shallow Hal was the obvious giveaway to all of that.
But now, I think that has actually become a lot more frowned upon because we have not seen it so much in the past few years as the body positivity and health at every size movements have gained traction.
As you've seen on social media, that level of traction has been waning of late. No lie. Those that were considered champions for it at one point, like Tess Holliday for example, eking out an existence on TikTok and some deal with H&M that no one really pays attention to. Every so often just reappearing to be snarky about her weight and people judging her for her weight, to then disappear again into irrelevancy. The fact that they're not featuring much in comedy movies when there haven't been so many comedy movies produced on a yearly basis would surely be an indicator that people's funny bones have been eroded at. The window of acceptable comedy has gotten smaller based on societal standards in respective countries, where fat jokes might not be as well received.
I don't necessarily think we're above it. I don't think it'll never happen again, but I've noticed it happens a lot less, and when it does happen, it gets called out.
Which in turn is not necessarily a good or bad thing. Any publicity can in fact be good publicity. It's just, again, that window of acceptable comedy has gotten smaller because of the indignance of a minority of people who take great offence to being mocked. I firmly believe everyone, regardless of size, appearance, faith, creed, sexuality, any other identifying marker, should be mocked to high hell because bants, and because I find virtually everything funny.
But where people are still doing fat suits and still getting away with it is in drama. In prestige drama, if you put a very famous thin actor in a fat suit, that becomes the ultimate acting challenge for them.
Is that a bad thing though when they put on a performance that can genuinely highlight the struggles of that person? Tell that story convincingly, show you just how hard it is for that person to make all the choices they make. And I know this is alluding to Brendan Fraser's performance. I know that. Is that a bad thing? And if it is, why? Try and answer it without saying the following. Because Stone Cold said so, and because I feel it's wrong. Oh, and without saying it trivializes the struggle. Because that movie, the one you're clearly talking about, highlighted the struggle quite well for a lot of people who cannot get beyond it. Don't forget, in this, a lot of the struggles that he was portraying came from grief and loss.
So nowadays, you're more likely to see a big name actor like Renee Zellweger, Jared Leto, Sarah Paulson don a fat suit to be in a drama. And the press coverage of it is all like, wow, so impressive.
I think you desperately wished they had cast somebody who was fat into that role. But you do realize, had they cast that person for being fat into that role, you would then have a new problem to complain about, and that is, but you're hiring someone because they're fat. You're trivializing their existence of fatness, and not because they're the best person for the role. It's the shifting of the goalpost. You get quite used to it on TikTok. You guys are a train wreck over there.
Fat suits have gone highbrow.
Well, you don't want to go cheap on them. Last thing you want is a fat suit spilling out.
I've said on here before and on my podcast that when we put a comedic character in a fat suit, it allows the audience to have some distance from that character and so allows them to laugh at more cruel jokes about them.
It depends on the setting made and how the viewer, takes the content they are consuming. You will find, even with period dramas, some will laugh at it regardless, because they're uncomfortable or cringed out, or for many other reasons in fact. It's not strictly just what I say in this one. The same can be said for comedy when the point of the comedy is to make you laugh, usually with an underlying message of humanity.
But in drama, I think it serves kind of a similar purpose, wherein the audience is distanced from the person in the fat suit as being an actual fat person, and that allows them to have more empathy and view them as a more complex character, because they know it's not really a fat person in the suit.
You do realise with what you've just said, that you are then, the viewer, consuming this content, both being entertained and educated. To empathise and understand gives you a chance to learn and be a better person. The person, the actor portraying the character that is larger, portraying the struggles as well as the drama, the comedy, can in turn be an educator and help others be less prejudiced, less judgmental. I feel like you just want to bitch here for the sake of it, so I'm going to go to video number 3, where I think certain references you make could be transposed onto me having responded to you in the past.
So I'm super shadow banned right now and my videos have not been appearing in the For You page.
I was hoping this would come up so I could actually show you a video which is on the screen. I've scrolled back a few months or maybe a couple years. You're not the most active creator, it turns out. You have to be incredibly active to be able to maintain any level of relevancy. But as time has gone by, your views have in fact diminished. TikTok is not the same as YouTube. You rise, you plateau, you fall. On YouTube, you rarely come back up. On TikTok, you rise, plateau, fall, rise, plateau, fall, rise, plateau, fall, and it actually continues for as long as you want to keep on struggling to get by on it, or to make content on it. When you have very little in the way of original messages left to say, you then have to consider whether or not you want to say the same thing over and over again, or whether you want to branch out and do other types of content entirely. Your content, typically, in your home, sat down replying to comments or espousing your beliefs that we all need to accept morbid obesity as normal. So are you super shadow banned? Prove it.
But I started getting a lot of random hate comments on old videos. And whenever that happens, I'm like, some ass YouTuber must have made some video about me. So I went and I looked it up to see if it was from like the last few days. And the most recent one was 7 days ago. And I watched some of it.
Okay, so I can definitively say I have not made a video in the last 7 days on this person. However, some of the comments will sound a bit like they're describing my content. Certainly based on a large number of comments I get from you lovely, lovely people and that German person.
And it was so fucking boring and badly done. It was like not engaging at all. The person was talking so like slowly and unengagingly and like monotone. There was like so little of actually me talking. Sorry, I literally just rolled out of bed and started recording that. But most of the video was them like very slowly and monotonously like supposedly dissecting my points, but like the amount of time in that video that they actually played my videos was so short.
But were they at any point correct in any of their criticisms of you? Now you will say on the face of it, no, of course not. And I can say this from my super shadow banned account, where loads of people are going to be paying close attention to everything I say. Because you've only just gotten up, which means you've been obsessively looking for things to criticize and complain about. I see we've made our choice with the style of content we want to make going forward. I love that when I bothered to look at a lot of your videos, the majority of the comments were negative towards you. I think you're less super shadow banned and more less recommended because people are choosing not to want to see your content anymore, because your message is not resonating with the oikory.
And when I watch that shit and they're like, oh, I'm sick own, like whatever, like I still agree with myself. I'm like, no, you're just willfully missing my points.
Yes, nothing more willfully missing a point more than somebody espousing their beliefs as if 100% true and refusing to acknowledge that they can in fact be wrong on something, because insert all obligatory remarks here that usually mean I'm simply better than you. I usually tell my audience to make their minds up for themselves. I think it's vitally important people do that. I do not agree in always believing that I can always be right in everything I've done as a creator. When you are so full of yourself, in two very literal senses, it is understandable you are unable to see beyond your own gravitational pull.